Textured dial, funky green strap. You know it when you see it, it's the Patek Aquanaut. In 1997, when the watch came out, Patek wanted to reach a consumer who was ready to enter high-end watch collecting. But the Aquanaut was designed to stand on its own, not a watch that you settle for. I like to think of the Aquanaut as the Solange to the Nautilus's Beyonce. The Nautilus might be a little more famous, but the Aquanaut is an icon in its own right. We are taking it back to the turn of the century with this Patek Philippe Aquanaut 5065A from 2001. Now, it can be hard to get your hands on a new Aquanaut, not as hard as a Nautilus, but that's neither here nor there, which is why we're focusing on this neo-vintage model. The 5065A, the A stands for acier, steel, was the jumbo at the time, 38 millimeters up from 36 millimeters. They upgraded the movement and went from a closed case back to this beautiful open case back. Inside you'll find self-winding caliber 315SC, updated from the 330S. For some, the updated movement might be what's exciting about this watch. For me, this watch demonstrates the turn of an era. We get the updated caliber symbolizing the new, but it's in a combination with a certain style, all in this package that was only available for a few years. So with the Aquanaut in general, you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get high-end, Auguste watchmaking with something a little bit more playful, down to earth, easier to wear. And speaking of best of both worlds, I want to talk a little bit about neo-vintage, which sounds like perhaps I just made that up for this video. I did not, in fact. It's an emerging category for a lot of collectors. They're watches that don't hit the vintage cutoff. As an elder millennial, I'm thrilled to know that watches from the 90s aren't quite vintage yet. And they're not current production model watches, or even really pre-owned watches. It's a mix of time and design, and I think sort of history of the watch combined together. Another thing about neo-vintage is you are basically getting on the ground floor of vintage. Time marches on whether we like it or not, and give it a couple of years, this will be a legitimately vintage watch. This 38 millimeter size is actually really fantastic. It sounds like it could be bigger when you hear jumbo, but it actually sits really nicely on my 7-inch-ish wrist. It's about 8 millimeters thick, so the case profile isn't too bulky or heavy. When you combine it with the strap, it does have a strong wrist presence, which I really like. It's distinct, but not flashy. It doesn't scream at you from across the room, it simply just waves. What the Aquanaut is most famous for is this grenade dial with these grooves, and what this earlier model gives is even deeper grooves. And then what this model, this neo-vintage model, offers is also the tritium lume, which gives it this nice creaminess on the hands and hour markers. It's just really gorgeous to look at. If I look a little smug in these shots, it's because I was. It put a little extra pep in my step, and everyone on set that day had a similar reaction of putting it on and thinking, man, I really like this watch. The composite strap, this one is a Patek khaki green, which is highly sought after by collectors. I like it because I think it's sort of a sassier version of a neutral. It doesn't look too bold on the wrist, but it doesn't fully disappear. It's more exciting than a black strap. But you can switch it up if that's your thing. Aquanaut straps have kind of taken on a life of their own. Incredibly collectible. John Mayer pulled out a whole bag of straps in one of his talking watches. I'm sure there's a Reddit forum that I could wade into about it. It speaks to the playfulness of the Aquanaut. You get this really great Patek Philippe pedigree, you get great watchmaking, you get high-end materials, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. If you wanted to put something purple on this watch, you probably could. And I think that that's what I like about it, is that it is a approachable, high-end watch. With its sporty but posh design, you can wear it for just about any occasion, from the juice bar to the bar to taking the bar. The Aquanaut, and this Aquanaut in particular, give you basically everything you could ever want. You get one of the most iconic designs of the 90s, you get sportiness, you get high-end watchmaking, you get a go-anywhere aesthetic. But with neo-vintage, you get easy serviceability and the character that comes with time. You don't need me to convince you of the Aquanaut's various merits. It's a very famous watch. I'm just here to show you what could be.